Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, now more than ever, it is so important to support the homegrown talent. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with, once more, as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do. You're listening to us right now. You can subscribe to the podcast and give us one of those big 5-star ratings. You can find us over at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, because we basically cover the moving image at large. If we're watching it and writing about it and talking about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please stop on by. On this episode, we're diving into a little bit of Canadian CanCon, set against the lush background of Northern Ontario and its beautiful forestry and all that other fun stuff. It's an emotionally charged drama. It's called The Wishing Tree. It's going to be on all VOD platforms this coming February 8th, Tuesday, like iTunes, that kind of thing. And it's the feature film directorial debut from actor Laura Adamo. And it stars Laura and several other people. And well, again, like I said, it's an emotionally charged drama. It's the story of someone who's suffered a lifetime of disappointment and pain, and as Laura's character, Julia, leaves behind her crumbling marriage and sets off alone on an arduous hiking expedition in a quest for answers, healing, and most importantly, peace, as she searches for the fabled wishing tree, believed to bring good fortune to those who come and ask. On the trail, though, Julia encounters Caleb and Ryan, who are lost in the woods, and both start struggling with demons of their own. But as they're thrown together unexpectedly, they all embark on this soul-searching journey of transformation, discovery, and hope, which they find in really some unlikely and unexpected ways. It's a personal story. It's an emotional story. It's the kind of thing that treads the line between pure drama, but a little bit of fantasy at the same time. And I mean, there's some real interesting elements in here that Laura put into her debut feature, and we had the distinct pleasure of sitting down to talk with Laura, just to talk about an actor, getting behind the camera for the first time, and inspiration for the film, and so on and so forth. But check out The Wishing Tree on video on demand platforms this coming Tuesday, February 8th, tomorrow. But first, check out our talk with Laura in progress, because quite frankly, it's a good one.
It certainly was inspired by true events. It's not biographical by any means, but I struggled with fertility for several years to have my son. And it is a very taxing, emotional, heart-wrenching process that any woman who's gone through it would be able to relate to. And so I had this giant well of pain in me. And as an artist, what do? We create. As an actor, I can't go, audition for something like that. So I thought, I'm going to write this story because I just feel like I need this cathartic experience. So that's how it started. I wrote the story as one of the ways in which I could heal from the journey that I was on. I wrote it after my son was born, when I started to see some hope in the world.
Right.
And joy again. But I realized in the process I had sort of lost, I don't want to say my humanity, but the journey to have him, I'd lost my spark.
Right.
So that's very tricky as an artist, right? Because we're not punching a clock and
for sure, yeah.
For the job sense. So it sort of guided me back to my spark and my creativity, just the initial writing of the story.
Now, I'm so glad most of this movie was outside, because it feels like if you had done it in sort of a set piece, it would have been a different movie? Like, how important was it for you to sort of literally not have a set and sort of be out in the wilderness to tell this story?
It was the premise that I started with, because for me as a person and as a human, the way I got through my 5 years of fertility was always going back into nature, because you just sort of realize there's something bigger than you, that we're just these little people on planet Earth trying to live our lives. And it just always gave me perspective, and it always made me feel better. So for me, that is what I started with, was this idea of this woman going back to where she's from, going back into nature. I mean, I knew it would be challenging to shoot, but I also knew if we could pull it off, we would have a very beautiful film I wanted the forest, the trails, the experience to almost be another character in the film, so that people could really feel that viscerally.
For sure.
Audience members, yeah, because it's gorgeous. I mean, we do live in a gorgeous country, and there are some incredibly beautiful places that people haven't seen.
You create such an interesting dynamic, especially just between the three characters, and I mean, it's really kind of amazing to watch. And I mean, you can't, especially as a director, you can't necessarily just cast for the sake of casting. You've got to find the right people to play the right parts. Can you walk me through a little bit of that process and just making sure everyone was the right fit? Because I mean, I've got to imagine if it was the wrong fit, this wouldn't have worked.
100%. And I think, so initially I was not supposed to direct the film. We had a director on board, and very early in pre-production, when we just started casting, actually the day before we started casting, he sat me down, he said, you know what, he goes, I don't think you realize you've been doing the role of a director so far. And I think people are going to naturally look to you on set. And I think you should direct this film. And I was like, never directed anything before. So that sort of led to a series of conversations with my producers. And once they were on board to do that, I really had no time to think, because we were in pre-production. But because I come at it as an actor, for me, you just know it's not, there were so many great actors that we were lucky enough to have audition, but there is an essence that you know when you know. And so the Ryan character, he was an actor that I knew before, and I had met him like the year before when I was finishing the script, and we were sort of starting the financing and the pre-production. I mean, it takes such a long time to get to set, right? And as soon as I met him, I was like, that is my, if this film gets made, that's my Ryan. Like, he just had the right. Caleb, I remember getting into arguments with my producer. He's like, what are you looking for? I don't understand what you're looking for. Like, we've had so many great actors come in. And I said, I'll know it when I see it and I feel it. So we were literally going to set, I think in 4 days, and we hadn't cast that role yet. It was really down to the wire. But the moment I met Sebastian, I again, it's just my essence. It's like, I knew he was the right one, and he lives in Los Angeles, so he flew in literally the next day. And the day after that, we were doing our table read and our fittings. So it was a mad exercise in just trust. I was like, I know, I'm just gonna. And the blessing for me, having not directed anything, is, and this is what I said to my producer, is that I only have my instinct. I have no experience to go on. So if I don't follow that, I'm going to be in trouble, right? Yeah. So and that, if we cast the right two people, my job's going to be so much easier. And if we don't cast the right people, this film's not going to work, right? For sure. It's people in the woods. They have to be the right three people. So
no, I mean, I love that you kind of sort of fell into directing, because I mean, there is the old joke of obviously every actor wants to direct, but I mean, I'm kind of curious, once you committed and were sort of in there, like, is there anything about the process that surprised you, or maybe that you learned that maybe you didn't expect to learn?
I was not one of those every actor wants to direct people. So I knew something in me said, you have to do this. And if you don't do this, this film's not going to get made. So I just jumped in, and I had the support of my producers, thankfully, to allow me to do that. And I was fortunate to hire an amazing DP who literally sat with me for 2 weeks. We storyboarded every single moment, like, for him to get inside my head, because I needed him to understand the feel, right, of what we were going for. And he was wonderful. And I needed to be able to trust him when I had to say, okay, I need you to take this, because I got to be an actor in this moment for this scene, because it's too intense for me to to be both, right? So that we had an incredible relationship and a lot of trust there, and he's amazing. So I learned, I learned that I actually loved the process. I didn't realize that I would love it so much, truthfully, because you're with it from start to finish, right? So when all the actors go home, then you're sitting with your editor and you're making, you know, the film, right? You're cutting the film and you're making it's almost like a different film in the editing suite. And then your editor leaves you and you sort of mourn the loss of that. And then you're with your sound people, right? And then that's and then you're with your composer. So it's like you are the constant in every single step, but it's such a collaborative process that, to me, it's really, you're as good as the people you surround yourself with. And we were lucky enough that we didn't have any ego involved. It was just, everyone was just committed to making the best film possible. And so I also learned that the energy on set is in film. I don't know about television because I haven't directed, but it is dictated by the director. So you decide from that first moment when you are on set with your crew and cast what kind of set you're going to run, and then people just follow that. So for me, because it was such a personal journey, I mean, I literally, the first day on set, my producer's like, okay, I think, you know, this is Laura, she's a director, she wants to say a few words, which I didn't. I was like literally shitting my pants because I was like, I am like one day at a time, right? And I literally just thanked everyone for being there. And because I'm a girl, I guess, I burst into tears, and I just had so much gratitude for everyone, because it was hard. We're in the middle of the woods where it was not an easy shoot. Like, not everyone would have signed up for that. We're a true indie film, so, you know, there's pay cuts. And I was just so grateful that I think that helped to set the tone for people to really step up and give 150%. So I'm grateful to everyone who participated, because it's the reason the film is what it is, really.
Well, and I mean, I think that comes through in the work as well, because I mean, in particular, there are some set pieces and some shots, I mean, without being too spoilery, like the moment when one of the guys falls into the river, that moment felt big. Yeah. When you're all getting naked by the fire, like you're getting drawn in, and it's intimate and it's close and it's intense. And that shed towards the end, just where you're there and just having this moment, and it really created these sort of installments along the journey. I mean, how important was it for you to sort of not just be rocking in the woods, but to have almost totems along the way in your story for characters to be having their moments?
Yeah, that was really important, because it's a lot of, you know, we were like, okay, can't just be talking and walking all the time, right?
Yeah.
And feeling these things, like things there have to be these moments that happen that anchor the journey on this trail. So that was very important to do. The river scene, God, that was probably one of the hardest scenes to cut, because that was one mistake I made. We did one take of Ryan falling into the river.
Right.
And everyone was like, okay, let's go, because we had no time, right? I mean, we had no lighting, you know, so we relied on natural light. So there was no not getting your days.
Yeah.
And to fill in like all filler stuff, which we didn't even have scheduled in schedule, right? So there was sort of a big rush, because where we shot that, there was this other unique forest that we wanted to just shoot some on the fly trail walking stuff. And I remember my gut in that moment, I was like, God, I'd like to do one more, but then the actor's got to get dressed, we have to dry his hair, and I'm looking at the light, I'm like, are we going to have any time to shoot this other stuff? So we didn't shoot a second take. But when you have one take and you're cutting from, you just don't have the option. Like I would have, that was that scene, my editor and I probably logged 100 hours on that scene.
Wow.
Like, trying to make that work to the best ability that we could. And I know now, you know, having lessons learned, I'm like, the director in me is like, well, you just do another take. You just do another take of something that is action like that you just need that footage to cut around.
Right.
But with that, and then also working with the composer to try to heighten the, you know, music is such a huge,
of course, yeah,
huge thing. And we had our composer was amazing, and she wrote an original score for the film. So we were able to work with her in tandem, and my sound guy to really, I mean, that scene is really the art of filmmaking.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Everything that had to come together to make it feel what it needed to feel.
No,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And I mean, it's so important. And I mean, I got to go back to the cabin just because I mean, I love the design of it because in a different movie, if I'd found that in the middle of the woods, I would have thought I was in a completely different movie. But
Right.
it has that kind of aura to it. Like, how important was it for you to sort of spend time and really design this space? Because I mean, obviously, it's such a pivotal point in the movie, and it felt very meticulous just seeing you in that space.
Yeah, so that was written, the way that was written, and the way we discovered, way we set decorated it with our production designer is totally different. So the way it was written was supposed to be much more not as quiet and quaint and subtle. It was supposed to be much more obvious once you get inside, but it just, none of it was working. Like all these colors and this and that, we were like, oh God. And so literally that was like me and my production designer, like till midnight. And then we were like texting back and forth, after till 2 a.m. Okay, how are we going to do, what are we going to do? And we found these symbols that sort of meant different words. And we're like, you know what, let's just make it way more subtle, because once we got in there and we saw the light coming through, it was one of the things that we were able to kind of go with our instinct in the moment, which was a gift, right? Because we have such a small crew too, we could do that. We were like, okay, we're going to scrap all that. And this is actually, now that we're in the space, because we didn't have time to go test things out, right? It's again, independent film, like you're in the space and you're shooting. But because it was just 2 actors that day, it was easy in terms of that. We were able to just get in there and literally go, okay, here's this triangle. We're going to put this here and these jars. Yeah, that's a great idea. And, the jars were always in there. Like in my mind, it's sort of some form of ayahuasca,
Right?
Herbs and stuff. But everything else was meant to be much bolder, and it just didn't work in the space. And we thought, you know what, less is more here. So between her, myself, and my DP, we just kind of intuitively made it work as we were in there.
Well, I think you did and then some, because it's a fantastic moment in the film. And for me, as I think on it, this is a film that I think when I try to describe it, like the best way I can describe it is almost like the way I hear Native people describe a spirit walk or a spirit journey. But it's like it's half grounded in the reality and pain of human suffering and the trials and tribulations that we all go through and the monkeys that we all have on our back, but also straddling that line between sort of these other elements as well. I mean, how did you find it, especially as a first-time storyteller, walking the line between the grounded and the not so grounded almost at the same time?
Yeah, I love that reference, by the way. I might steal that from you, because that's actually a really good summation of it. It is that fine line between, I say, reality and that what we can see, feel, and touch that's tangible, and then again, like, let's call it spirit or energy, the energetic world that we live in as well. And so that was, it was funny. Someone said to me, oh, it would have been interesting had the end been more magical, more like out of this world.
No.
That wasn't the like, it just had to have that hint of it. And for me, the character at the end of the film is meant to be that wise woman who literally, what she does for Julia is just hold the space and the container for her grief so that she can fully move through it. That's all she does. But it's so hard for us as humans to do that, because we want to fix people, because we're uncomfortable with people's pain. We're uncomfortable. We want to make people feel better, right? And the only thing that's what that woman needed, and no one could give it to her. So it's like the simplest gift, but the hardest thing. And I feel like I could make a movie about the Mira character, the woman at the end of the film, because I have a whole backstory in my head as to how she came to be a forest dweller and live in the forest and do the things that she does, that I had a really fun time writing. But I needed to know what informed her, and I needed to be able to give that to the actor if they needed more interpretation on that, or they wanted more guidance on who
for sure
and how. And she was amazing. I mean, that was a tough role to cast as well. And we actually had cast Roberta Maxwell, who played the mother in Brokeback Mountain, and then she unfortunately was not able to do it at the last minute. So that was another role we were like, oh my God, because if that wasn't played pitched perfectly by the actor, it would, I don't think the movie would have worked. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how much good you did before that moment. And Louisa Martin was amazing, and she just nailed it. I love her. And we had
No,
like
yeah.
coyotes that night, like the sound of the coyotes that you can hear in the distance are like, that's real. Like we were
Right.
like, how close are those, do we think? Like, because we're cuddled around this tree shooting, you know, in the middle of the night.
No,
So-
but you know what? I mean, I think the ambiguity around that character definitely adds just to sort of the whole story of grief that you're trying to tell, because I mean, especially in any walk of life, we always want to quantify grief, but in reality, you can't quantify it. And that's what makes it so unique. And I mean, I think you really captured that sort of immaculately. And I mean, I think that's what makes this such a film that people are going to be able to relate to, because there's elements in there where they're going to be thinking, they're going to have to sort of, you know, scratch their head and go, And I mean, I think that's kind of the whole point.
Yes. And I think that I'm also aware that, you know, that last third of the film, like we're asking the audience to take a leap of faith.
For sure.
And I thought about that a lot, truthfully, as a filmmaker, because I was like, you know, why is it that you could look at like huge Hollywood films that have all the money in the world to throw at problems, and one film can ask you to make the smallest leap with them, and you don't want to do it. Like you're like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And others can ask you to make this massive leap, and you're willing to go on the journey. And so I'm aware that maybe we did that well. Maybe some people will think we did that well, and maybe some people will think we won't. And to be okay with whatever people think about it.
For sure.
Which is hard, right?
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Now, I mean, this is a silly question, but this is always one I like to ask. Can you think back to the younger days? Like, what were the movies or the movie moments that maybe sort of had the light switch go off in your head and made you want to get into this business?
It's funny. I was like, so my son is just turned 7, and my son is actually the little boy at the end of the film. But I was like, is he too young to watch Karate Kid? Like that was like a big movie, right? I'm like, is he too young? I think I need to rewatch it myself to see if it's like too young. But films like that, I was a huge John Hughes fan.
Right. Okay.
I really was. In fact, I have a filmmaker friend who who shot a documentary about John Hughes and couldn't get distribution. And then poor John Hughes died.
Yeah.
And they got distribution. So he was a big inspiration. In terms of like more modern day, because again, I look forward to directing something again where I have actual more time to come into it from a director's perspective.
Right.
Because I didn't really have that consciously with this film, but because I had to like really sort of pick like who do I love? And so my guiding, I guess, light would have been Jean Marc Vallee. And not just because he did Wild. Actually, Wild was, yes, he shot A Woman in the Woods, but totally different films, right? More so because of the moments he creates. And the best moment I can use to explain that is, you know, remember the scene in the grocery store in Dallas Buyers Club?
Yeah.
Where there's just, you can tell it's not about the perfect blocking and the perfect execution. It's about giving the actors the breadth to move and to find the feelings of the moment. So for me, that was very important to give actors, everyone the space to find what they needed to find. And then also in the editing, it was never about the most beautiful shot or the most perfectly composed shot. It was always about, what do I feel the most? Where, and that was my editor and I get this shot's more perfect, but it's not that kind of movie, right? And we're lucky enough that we had a DP that captured a lot of beautiful moments. It was always about the feeling and the movement of that feeling, and can we make that a little visceral for the audience? So he's the best.
Oh, you know what? I love that you say Vallee. I mean, I was so sad when I heard the news because I mean he was such a Canadian treasure, and I mean honestly, if you were inspired by him to make this film, I can't wait to see what you do when you get a little bit of time on the next one.
No, thank you.
But you know what? Just thank you for the time and congratulations on a hell of a film. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. That means a lot. I really do appreciate that.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.